"Can I share this table?" asked the paralyzed girl to the single dad. Then he said, "Of course, please sit down," and slid the chair out gently without making it a big deal, the way a man does when kindness is just a habit and not a performance. His name was Daniel, a 38-year-old construction foreman who spent his Saturdays at this small cafe near the park because it was the one place in the city that still felt quiet enough to think. He had a 7-year-old son named Leo at home with his sister, and he was using this one stolen hour to drink bad coffee and read through a stack of overdue paperwork. The cafe was packed that afternoon, every table full, and when he looked up and saw her, a young woman in a wheelchair, maybe 25, balancing a tray on her lap and scanning the room. With tired eyes, he didn't hesitate for even a second. He simply pulled out the chair across from him and said, "Plenty of room here." Her name was Mara, and she thanked him quietly, the way someone does when they've asked too. Many strangers for small favors and have learned not to expect warmth in return. She set her tray down carefully and adjusted her wheelchair to the edge of the table, and for a few minutes they said nothing, both of them in their own worlds. Then Leo called, and Daniel answered with the easy, patient voice of a father who has said, "I'll be home soon, buddy," 1,000 times. And when he hung up, Mara smiled softly and said, "How old?" And he said, "7 going on 40. She laughed at that, a real laugh, the kind that surprises even the person laughing. And something in the air between them shifted. They started talking the way strangers sometimes do, when they are both quietly carrying something heavy, and the weight becomes easier when shared out loud. She told him she had been a dancer, not casually but professionally, with a company that toured across 3 countries, and that 2 years ago a drunk driver had taken that from her in 4 seconds on a Tuesday evening in October. She said it without self-pity, just the clean, bare truth of it. And Daniel listened the way he always listened, without rushing to fill the silence with empty comfort. He told her about losing his wife to illness 4 years ago, about learning to braid hair from YouTube tutorials because Leo had wanted braids for school, about burning 17 dinners before he finally figured out how to cook pasta without turning it into glue. She laughed again and said, 17? And he said, the 18th one was a miracle. And she shook her head like she couldn't quite believe him, but liked him for saying it. They talked for 2 hours without noticing the time pass. At some point, the cafe emptied and refilled around them, and neither of them moved. Mara told him she had started choreographing from her wheelchair, that her hands still knew the language of movement even when her legs had forgotten it, that she was building something new and terrifying and wonderful all at once. Daniel told her that was the bravest thing he had ever heard anyone say, and he meant it the way only someone who has rebuilt their own life from broken pieces can mean it. When she finally had to leave, she said, "Thank you for the table," and he said, "Thank you for the company," and they exchanged numbers, the way 2 people do when they already know. This is not the last conversation. 3 months later, Daniel sat in the front row of a small theater with Leo on his lap, watching Mara's first choreographed show, a piece she had created entirely from a wheelchair, performed by a mixed company of dancers, some standing and some not, all of them moving in the most stunning way he had ever seen. When the lights came up, Leo whispered, "Dad, she's amazing." And Daniel nodded and thought about a Saturday afternoon in a crowded cafe and a single, quiet question that had changed the direction of both their lives. Sometimes a shared table is just a shared table, and sometimes it is the beginning of everything. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner Stories, because this is exactly the kind of story we are here to tell, one act of quiet humanity at a time.